My name is Sam McAllister. We got Jess Boland here as well today. A little bit of an introduction about ourselves. So my position here at Airbus is currently the team lead of engineering capability. So as part of that role, I guess it's a very small part is to do, I guess, the grad and internship programs. I guess be out there, engage with the local communities and universities and get everyone excited. My background is I'm a mechanical engineer. Excuse me, sorry, got a frog in my throat. Mechanical engineer studying at QUT. Started at Airbus as an intern, then joined what was a graduate program at the time, and then various teams throughout, and then have taken on this this new role. And I've been here for a year now. So I still like to think I'm somewhat sort of relatable to, I guess, the current cohort of university graduates, but I'm probably bordering on a bit too old now. So I do have Jess with me today, and I'll get her to quickly give a brief introduction of herself.
Yeah, so my name's Jessica Boland. I'm currently a second year graduate engineer here at Airbus Australia Pacific. So a bit about my background. I studied a Bachelor of Electrical Aerospace Engineering at QUT, and I did a second major in Computer and Software Systems Engineering. I joined Airbus in 2020 as an intern. We'll talk a little bit more about that program further on. And then I was lucky enough to come back in 2021 as a graduate. And as part of that, I have been able to develop my professional career, both through engineering opportunities and other soft skills, which Airbus is really great at facilitating. I'll talk a little bit more about what I've done as part of this program a little bit further on after we give you a bit of an overview of the program itself. So.
Too easy. Thank you, Jess. Yeah, so I've got a bit of a large slide pack here, so I'll probably try to touch on, I guess, key points, but move forward rather quickly to make sure that we can hit on all those questions. So Airbus in Australia Pacific, it's a very large company in the sense we've got about 1,500 staff here, and we do work on a multitude of defence platforms. We've also got some civil and para-public programs as well. We do have, I guess, teams over in New Zealand as well, and we do some component servicings over there. So our Airbus values, so we have our 6 Airbus values with our safety term, with our vision, sorry, which is to be our customer's trusted partner to fly, to succeed and to come back safely every time. That's pretty much at the core of everything that we do. So as a lot of companies and individuals have alluded to today, I guess you want to align yourself, your applications with companies that align with your values. And our values were selected by our employees from an Airbus team globally. And these really ring true, I guess, to a lot of what our hiring criteria is. We'll sort of focus more, I guess, on values for graduates, noting that, yeah, the, I guess, experiences of a graduate, it can't be expected to be 15 years in the industry. So we just make sure, I guess, they're a good fit with our values. And then we've got key behaviors as well there, which is how we demonstrate our values in a sense. So a bit more about our region here in Australia Pacific. So Airbus Australia Pacific is a subsidiary of Airbus Helicopters, which is then a subsidiary of obviously Airbus Global as well. So here in Australia Pacific, we've got, as I mentioned, some defence capabilities, some civil capabilities, and then the para-public as well. So our main head office is in Brisbane, out at the Brisbane airport here. So we've got a number of buildings. Most of our engineers are based here, but we do have a relatively large team as well down in Richmond in New South Wales there. So easy. So a little bit about the platforms that you'd be working on as a graduate here at Airbus. So we have the AH Tiger. These were mostly assembled here in Brisbane. So the first 4 aircraft were delivered from France. And then the next 18 aircraft all assembled essentially here on site in Brisbane, using our own individuals, staffs, trained up a large number of people in terms of engineers, but also maintainers, and just built, I guess, a bit of a capability in the industry. This platform is currently used by the Army, and I guess is used on also on naval operations. The MH Taipan, so it's the multi-role helicopter, and it's used for air mobile operations, maritime support, and support to the special operations as well. We have 47 of those aircraft. Again, the first 4 were assembled over in France, and then the remaining 43 were assembled here in Brisbane. With that new capability, like that new aircraft came, I guess, the need to grow our capability. So we ramped up our capacity by hiring more engineers, more staff to get that job done. Those aircraft are all based out of either Nowra, Oakey, Townsville, or Holsworthy. Based out of Richmond, down in Sydney, is our C130J. So quite a popular aircraft. It's our fixed wing aircraft that we support mostly here in Australia. We do have the P3 down in Adelaide, I believe it is as well. But most of the work for our engineers does revolve around the C130J for fixed wing. There's 12 of those aircraft that are currently operated out of the RAF base there at Richmond. So I guess more about our graduate program now that we've sort of, I guess, covered what Airbus is here in Australia Pacific. So we're really looking for, I guess, all sort of engineering disciplines, be it software, systems, mechanical, structures. Really, any sort of degree is probably going to be applicable for a graduate position here at Airbus. I guess the big thing for us that the graduate degree really is there to teach you some critical thinking. Helps you to, I guess, learn how to work in teams, how to integrate with teams, how to deal with challenges and that sort of stuff as well. All these sort of questions that will be asked in interviews as well, no doubt. So I guess the graduate program in a bit more detail. So it's a 2-year fixed term contract and it's a 3 8-month rotations or thereabouts. We're a little bit flexible in the duration of the rotations, just depending, I guess, on the workload and enjoyment levels, I guess, that the individuals are getting out of it. The work that you will be doing in those teams is real and it's having a genuine impact, I guess, to the end user, which is the Australian Defence Force. As part of the graduate program, you get 2 weeks over in deeper maintenance, so getting hands-on with the tools, getting to understand, I guess, what it is the biggest gripes that maintainers have with in terms of access or, you know, working in cold temperatures or extremely hot temperatures, just all those things, I guess, that we don't necessarily consider on a day-to-day basis, being in our nice air-conditioned offices with our coffee machines. We provide a fair bit of training as well. So there is a lot of budget there in that graduate program for training for the graduates. So be it technical training, but then also soft skills training. I guess being an engineer, you need to be very broad in who you're talking to. You will have broad exposure in who you're talking to, no doubt, through the course of your career. So if we can set you up with those required skills in those first 2 years, we hope we will have done our job for your future career success. I guess a bit of Airbus extracurricular activities that they do. So we really want to drive STEM in the community. So getting out there to local schools, even regional schools as well, and just presenting our Little Engineers program, which pretty much just gets kids interacting with programming and building little Lego robots sort of things, and getting them excited about the STEM industry, getting them asking questions, getting them really thinking, I guess, about what it means to be in the STEM field. As I guess is evident by our participation today, we like getting involved with university students as well, be it to advertise for our own programs or just to sort of give back, help provide advice. If you do apply for other companies as well, no doubt the information that they provide or that we provide will be helpful regardless of where you do apply for in the end. And I guess the big draw card as well is getting your foot in the Airbus door. We have had a lot of interns turn into graduates, then graduates turn into full-time employees. And then I guess have a very broad reach in terms of where they actually go within Airbus. We have had a number travel over to France, Germany, the UK, just getting, I guess, exposure to various different parts of the business. But that really then comes down to the individual and the drive to then go and seek those opportunities. But once you do have your foot in the Airbus door, it lends to the fact that you've already demonstrated that you exhibit those values and behaviors that we want to see in our employees, and sort of makes it a little bit easier then moving forward. Sorry, I'll quickly just touch on a few of those pictures if it does go backwards. It doesn't, oh, nope, it did, sorry. So yeah, over on the right-hand side there, there's a few repairs that you can see. Those were done by, they're not necessarily repairs, but sort of hands-on work that our grads got done over in the DM section. Down the middle in the, there is a cockpit photo of the AH Tiger, and there is a sound blanket in the back there. So one of our grads has actually developed that, and it's now on all of our aircraft. Like I mentioned, I guess we do have a lot of training. So we've got a training tool called MyPulse Learning, and that's accessible to all our grads at any point in time. And then on the far left-hand side, there's just one of our interns who was at our Little Engineers display at Aviation High. So I'll hand over to Jess to give a brief overview, I guess, of her experiences on the graduate program.
Yeah, so I touched on this a little bit earlier, but my Airbus journey really started back in 2020. I was in the final year of my bachelor's, and I was lucky enough to get into the internship program. So that was a 6-month program. I worked about 3 days a week on the avionics team. And you know, basically it just had projects where I was able to design new modifications that need to be implemented on either the AH or MH helicopters that we support here in Brisbane. A couple of my tasks were, you know, working with other teams to facilitate adjustments to our internal processes or procedures, including the flight manuals, which was a really great opportunity to kind of get across not just our flight manuals for the platforms that we support here at Airbus, but in general, the aviation industry in Australia and how it's regulated. And just ensuring that we were meeting all the requirements. So doing an internship at Airbus is by no means a precursor to getting into the graduate role. So I was lucky enough to get into the graduate role. And like I said earlier, commenced that in 2021. And it is a 2-year program. So I am now currently on my 2nd rotation. But my first one was on the software systems development team, which works, as it's in the name, on software for our rotary wing platforms to, you know, facilitate those software builds via a development, test and integration process. So you may be familiar with the systems verification and validation process. So we apply a lot of those to our build life cycles. And then as part of my time on the team, there was a lot of investigation conducted into the features that we wanted to incorporate, you know, identifying interfaces and, you know, trying to determine if the solution that we wanted to implement, would there be any impacts? If so, were we still meeting our certification requirements? And also, engaging with all stakeholders and the customer throughout that entire process. You know, the last thing you want to do is develop something that, you know, the customer or end user, the operators would find, you know, difficult to use, or if they don't even need it in the first place. So there was constant engagement throughout the build process. And that just really, you know, enabled me to develop those soft skills I was talking about earlier. You know, it's great being a qualified engineer, but I think what makes someone successful in this career is the ability to communicate and conduct yourself in a timely manner. So I definitely was able to develop a lot of those skills in my first rotation. And then in September of 2021, I moved over onto our aviation product safety team. So that's basically just system safety. And I was able to, I'm still on that team and I will be until April, but just supporting the projects that we have here at Airbus. So, you know, if we're developing modifications that need to be implemented on aircraft, conducting system safety assessments to double check that, you know, we're meeting all the requirements of the platform. The platform is still meeting its, or within its type certification basis. And again, this was a role I thought, you know, I talked to a customer a lot in software systems dev, but nothing really forces you to get out there and talk to other teams within the business, the customer, and regulatory bodies like rotation on system safety does. So definitely been quite a steep learning curve, and getting some really valuable experiences on that team. Before I jump on to where I'm going next, I was just going to talk about the opportunities afforded to me outside of my day-to-day rotations. As a graduate at Airbus, I've been lucky enough to support the Little Engineers program that Sam was talking about earlier. And that has basically enabled me to visit local schools for a day who are there to, deliver the program. But in October of 2021, that also enabled me to be able to travel to Adelaide through the program, where we spent a couple of days at the Space Discovery Centre down there, which was fantastic for me to, network with other organisations in the business. And while also delivering the program and stimulating some interest in STEM from younger kids. And then in December 2021, I was fortunate enough again to be able to travel to Cairns to deliver the program to our rural schools. And then in April. So this path isn't, the paths at Airbus are very flexible, and the opportunities afforded to you are what you make of them. And I was lucky enough to be able to secure a permanent role. So I'll be commencing that in April. But we have many of our other grads have decided to stay on and conduct a third rotation. If you're not sure what you want to do, you've done your first couple of rotations and you're thinking, I would like some further experiences, there's definitely an opportunity open to do that. So next slide.
I might jump in there, I guess, just being mindful of time. Jess has put forward a bit of her advice.
Sam, just let you know, you're fine for time. You're the last prezzo, so you can run a little bit over. That's all good.
Perfect. Well, I'll hand back to Jess and I'll let her take this one. This is some good stuff. I think this will hopefully answer a lot of questions that people will have.
Yeah. So we were developing a slide a little bit earlier, and these are basically lessons learned from me and my application process, and things that I wish I knew when I was where you possibly are right now. What is it that I can do to further myself as a graduate? And I know that you're probably coming to the end of your final year if you haven't already graduated, and so the internship may not be super applicable, but if you can get into another internship before you graduate, that would be invaluable. And if you do have an internship currently, if you can just take on more roles or experiences and opportunities within that, definitely do so. Just further to that, the next point's like heavily related. It's about kind of getting your name out there and being open to opportunity and personal development. And you can also do that with, participating in like university clubs, events, and initiatives. I think at this stage, it's all about kind of creating your own brand and getting out there like you are today, participating in this. It's definitely something that I did in my final year, and it was possibly one of the reasons I was successful at getting the role with Airbus. So aside from those, you probably have heard those a million times. Something that I wish I had done was develop a preliminary career plan. And the reason I've got that on there is the company that you apply for now as a graduate will build the earlier stages of your career. So it's important to apply for a company whose core values align heavily with your own, and that you can see yourself growing within. And so, yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about the application process on the next slide, but take the opportunity now to really conduct your research into the company that you're applying for. The global presence and the projects that they've got going on. Because when I did that, I found that Airbus was a company that I really want to work for in the longer term. The projects that we work on day to day to support our customer, the Defence Force, are extremely interesting, and they align really heavily to my own interests. And then just tailor your application to your role. You may or may not already know that, but I found great success in really tailoring my application to the advertisement of the role. And not saying that you have to meet everything that you see on that job description, but just double checking that you're really marketing yourself in a way where you're putting across the fact that you are possessing of relevant experiences and values to the job. So I think with that, we can probably...
Brilliant. Yeah, so this next slide, I guess, just covers our current opportunities. So I guess just be aware that our applications are now open for graduate roles. We do have internships as well in Brisbane and in Richmond. But I guess for the most part, today was just targeted at graduates. As with everyone else that has spoken today, applicants are required to be an Australian citizen to apply to maintain and obtain a security clearance, just given our customer being the Australian Defence Force. Obviously, you'll need a bachelor's degree for the graduate role, and you'll need to have a keen interest in aviation, really demonstrate that. Applications are obviously now open, as I mentioned. That QR code there is a link to that application page. Just make sure you include your resume, cover letter, and academic transcript. That covers it from us. Sorry for taking a bit longer there.
I've just had a very quick question come through from one of the students, Sam. If I've got a student here, so they don't have a citizenship, but they've got a postgraduate visa. Is that still relevant for you guys?
I think this is also relevant to another question that we've got in the Q&A, so I can take that if you want, Sam. So we do have a criteria around, I think similar to BAE, of Australian citizenship being required, and that is so that you have the ability to obtain a security clearance. So I think, unfortunately, the Australian citizenship is a hard requirement.
I think most of the other, you're right. Sorry, Sam.
Yeah, there is, I guess, options for those that aren't Australian citizens, but it's an extremely long process, and the company needs to go through a lot of, I guess, regulations and hoops to get through. And it's generally not something that is, I guess, encouraged. Being the Australian Defence Force, they want to keep it all a sovereign capability. So.
I think that might be related to another question that I see about the viability of relocating to the United States to work on projects, given that the projects that we have here at Airbus Australia are heavily defence-based. I would say that due to the nature of us being a predominantly European company, there are significant more opportunities to relocate to Europe through Airbus. And, you know, if you do choose to apply for the company and you're successful in your application, if you express those interests, then there are definitely people here that will help facilitate that path and for you to move. So the United States, not so much, but definitely Europe is on the table. And then I've got another one here. So what percentage of graduate intakes are there to fill in the civil and commercial aircraft side of the company? So here at Airbus Australia.
Yeah, I'll take it. So yeah, in the our current Australia Airbus Pacific, we only take graduates for the Australian Pacific region. And that really is pretty much only the Australian Defence Force contracts that we mostly do. The graduate program doesn't extend, I guess, beyond there, but Airbus Europe and Airbus helicopters as well, they do also have their own graduate programs run separately.
And one final question before we wrap up. So would graduate software engineers be expected to relocate to Brisbane?
Yes, so I guess depending on where they are located, we do have the opportunity as well to have engineers down in Richmond there at Sydney. But for the most part, we do have a relocation budget allocated to support that transition up to Brisbane. So it's quite a substantial amount of money in the sense that it should relieve, I guess, a lot of stress as well with that whole big move. You've just graduated and moving away from everything you know.
Beautiful. All right, thanks so much for your time. Hopefully the students on this call have learned a little bit more about Airbus. And we've just shared in the chat for everyone that was on our panel session today, all the presenters, all their links are there. So if you missed anything, you want to learn a little bit more about individual employees, you can just click on those links and learn a little bit more about them. But thanks so much, Sam and Jess, for coming on board and just giving some insights into Airbus. Really appreciate it.
Brilliant. Thank you for your time.
No worries. Thanks, guys.